so therefore, I recited this verse from Surah Baqarah, which we also recited while we were doing the recitation of Quran, verse number 183. It says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyamu kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. By now, I think all of you or most of you should have this ayat memorized. Why? Because this is the ayah which is talking about the month of Ramadan. This is the ayah which is talking about fasting. So it is something you've heard so many times, something that we should go ahead and develop in the habit of memorizing. So if someone asks you, can you recite an ayah from Quran which talks about fasting, right away you should give reference to this verse of Quran. That's how we will develop at least to memorize Quran topic-wise if we cannot memorize the whole Quran sequentially. So there are many traditions which mention the benefits that can be attained from fasting, both physical and as well as spiritual. I keep reminding our listeners that inshallah after these preliminary days of first, second, third days of Ramadan, when we discuss about the benefits of fasting and the month of Ramadan and welcoming it, inshallah we'll switch over to the tafsir that we will be discussing this year. Inshallah we'll talk about the tafsir of Surah Hadid, chapter number 57 of Quran. But for today, there are many physical and spiritual benefits that have been mentioned. On the way to exploring the benefits, inshallah we will answer some of the questions as well, such as why fasting is an obligation in Islam. We see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trusts mu'mineen, and that's why the khitab is Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. God has good faith in us, and He considers us to be mu'min. That's definitely something showing good faith in you. If a person considers you mu'min, gives you the status of iman, and having iman and mu'min, you give that status back to that individual. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you that status when He's calling you Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, those who have brought faith in me, those who believe in me. So He is addressing us as believers, someone who believes in Him. Not just when we are among the people we believe in Him. No, when we are by ourselves in privacy we believe in Him. When we are among our American friends we believe in Him. When we are among our mu'mineen we believe in Him. In all of the situations in our life, we have believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that our belief changes and has ups and downs depending on the situations that we might find ourselves into. So belief remains the same and at the same level. So Allah is addressing directly. Another thing which we've mentioned I think over the years, but also worth reminding, that without any means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us the honor to address us directly. He does not utilize His Rasul to say, oh Prophet, tell these people who believe in me. Rather, when it comes to addressing the mu'mineen, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. There's no gap between you and I. There's no hindrance, there's no veil between you and I. I address you directly, and that is how I want to address you. So indeed, it is an honor when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing us directly. Just imagine when we always stuck up giving the examples of kings and the presidents of different nations, that imagine if a king addressed you directly, calling upon your name in the vicinity, in the proximity, in the population of thousands and thousands of people, a king would to address your name directly. How would you feel in that? I always give this example that once I was giving a speech, and after the speech, a person had asked me a question, a child had asked me a question. So the question was so good that I told him that I'll mention this question tomorrow in my lecture. And when I said that, he told me, also mention my name when you're mentioning the question by me. Why? Because he wanted people to know that he was the one who addressed that question, so that people will realize his knowledge and his intellect and whatnot. So this is something that we always look for. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing us directly. When He addresses the kuffar, the munafiqeen, the people who believe, those who are the followers of the Jewish clan or the Judaism, those who are Christians, and all the other sects, when He's addressing them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the Prophet. He says, Qul, O Prophet, tell, Ya ayyuhal kafirun, tell these kuffar. Qul ya ayyuhalladhina hadu. Tell these people who are believers of Judaism, for example. So Prophet is becoming the means, but when it comes to addressing the mu'mineen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not use Prophet. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Oh, those who believe in me. So we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing us directly. That indeed is also an honor that He is giving to us. Sometimes you don't want to talk to people. And I don't know if you can imagine, don't imagine that this is a situation in my house, but usually when husband and wife are not talking, they'll use their children. Tell your mother to do this. Or the mother will tell your father to do this, or bring that and whatnot. Why? Because they're not talking to one another. There's been some sort of difference that they have, so they're not speaking to one another. It happens, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's completely normal, as long as it dissolves within a couple of days. But as far as the mu'mineen, two mu'min are concerned, it should dissolve within 3 days. Otherwise, both are exiting the status of iman. So that is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also asks. So we see that we use other people to address others. Why? Because we don't want to talk to them directly at the moment. Now between husband and wife, it could only be a temporary thing. But if it's someone who's your grave enemy, you'll definitely would not want to talk to them. You'll ask other people to address on your behalf. We see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to us directly. That also shows us the importance that He's given to all of us. And that's why I quoted that hadith from our sixth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, yesterday, where he said, pleasure and the sweetness in the call of Allah removes the hardship of the fasting altogether. The way He calls upon us with this mercy and this compassion, it resolves and relieves all the hardship that exists in this act of fasting. Not that Allah is addressing us directly, giving the honor to us and calling us to be mu'mineen. What is our duty? We should embrace this call by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say labbaik to Him, and then move forward and embrace this as well. It would make sense to say labbaik to every time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us, saying Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Not just when He's saying, oh, go ahead and fast, and giving us the duty to fast, not just over here, but in every aspect. Whenever He says Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, we should turn around and say labbaik to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and perform that which is being asked by Him. Second thing He says, Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. I mentioned that yesterday just to touch upon it. He says it is something which people have been doing in the past as well. So it's not something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you new, or Islam is not innovating this fasting. Rather, this fasting always existed in the in the previous scriptures. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may become muttaqeen. Now Allah explains the reason behind fasting. He says, so that you may become pious. That is one of the essences of fasting. Not just to lose weight, not just to, because everyone else is fasting, we go ahead and fast. But the main essence is, as He says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may become pious and you may attain taqwa. Salawat Deji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So He says if He wanted, He could spread the eternal favors and the paradise for free. He could have given it to everyone for free if He wanted. But He decided, let's give those who earn it. In other words, have a competition among the people. Let people show how true they are to their belief in me. And when that happens, أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ أَمَلًا الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ أَمَلًا. He wants to test who among you has the best of the amal, best of the actions. And that's why different poets have also put it together in their own words. It says, Na burde ranj, ganj mayassar nemi shavad. Unless you face some sort of pain, without pain you cannot find the treasure. One who has worked hard for it takes full benefit from it. The physical and the material and the spiritual benefits and rewards which are explained through لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ is attained through hard work. Definitely requires difficult tasks to undertake. There's a hadith which says, Al-Jannatu huffat bil-makarihi. He says paradise is surrounded by difficulties. Don't think that you can just walk into the paradise. We've seen it in movies, we've seen it in different places, that the banks and these places where there are locks, whatever, they have these vaults. And these vaults, how secure these places are. It's not an easy task for anyone to just walk in. There's so many security, from the security aspect, there's so many hurdles on the way. Why? Because something valuable is laying over there. Something very, very valuable is over there. So paradise is the most valuable thing. So you don't think that it'll come out so easily and you'll be able to access it so easily. No, you'll have to go through makareh, you'll have to go through struggles, you'll have to go through difficulties. And that's why in Surah Baqarah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Am hasibtum an tadkhulul jannata wa lamma ya'atikum mathalul ladina khalaw min qablikum. He said, would you think that you would go to paradise without experiencing the kind of suffering others have experienced before you? Distresses and the afflictions and so on and so forth. No, it's not going to be that easy. Indeed, it'll be a difficult path. for you to go through. So atharat and the fawaid of this fasting. What are some of the benefits and what are some of the consequences of this fast? There are social effects and benefits. For example, the most obvious one that you always hear about and we are always reminded of is the rich and the well-off understand and comprehend the state of the poor and the needy. That is one of the reasons why fasting, from the social aspect, one of the favors and the benefits and the reasons behind fasting is that so those who are well off in the society and in the community could compare themselves to those who are not so well off, or so those who are so unfortunate in the society, to compare, to understand as to what these people go through. Just by helping those individuals does not make you understand the problems and the turmoil that those people are facing, the hardship that they go through every single day. By fasting and living a life that they are spending every single day, you get the flavor. For at least 1 month, you get the flavor and you understand exactly as to what these individuals, those who are less fortunate in the society, are going through. Moreover, it brings people together in congregation to perform the ibadat. No rich or poor are mentioned over there. When you come in and stand in salat, everyone, regardless of their status, regardless of their position, regardless of their even age sometimes, it does not matter. Although we go ahead and give preference to those who are elders, give them a first row or a place which is better. But there's no, in this regard, there's no statuses or anything of that sort when it comes to performance of the salat. Same thing is when you're fasting. Same thing is when you're performing hajj. Everyone has to go through the same exact thing so you can understand how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the whole society equal as far as the rights of the people are concerned. Whatever we want, we wish for, we get it easily. If you look at food, if you wish anything, tonight you might be wishing for something in iftar, you might even end up getting it. So it's not that hard. We wish for it and we get it. It's not that difficult. Alhamdulillah, our parents have done so much for us that whenever we ask for something, they do not deprive us of those things, especially when it comes to food and the small little necessities of the life. So we can easily get it. Likewise, if we wish for something else, like something which might be a little bit more expensive, like the cars or houses or whatever, if our parents are capable of doing so, they even go out of their way and they do that for us. So we can easily achieve these things, but less fortunate around us cannot. Ramadan teaches us to control the eating, where you could feel the pain of those who don't have any food or those who are unable to get adequate food. So sometimes it's not the talk of getting the food, sometimes it's also the talk of the adequate food, that the food which is at your disposal, is it really worth eating, or is it something which you're just going by? That's why we see in Nahjul Balagha, Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, his famous letter to Uthman ibn Hanif, or Uthman ibn Hunayf rather, who was the governor of Basra. I'll just read the translation. Imam says that if I had wanted, because Uthman had attended a gathering of a very notable rich person of the society at that time, so he said, this is where Imam ﷺ is addressing him, writing a letter. Why? Imam is Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Uthman ibn Hunayf is one of his deputies to Basra. Imam writes this: if I had wanted, I could have had easily found ways and means to provide for myself the purest honey, which was a luxury back then, and even it is today, the best variety of wheat and the finest silk clothes, and that could be woven. So Imam is saying, I could have all of these luxuries that anyone would want in this day and age, and it was easy for me. If I had just said, it would have been easy for me to get it, but it is not possible for inordinate cravings to overcome me, and it is not possible that greediness rather persuades me to acquire the best provision when in Hijaz and Yemen there may be people who have no hope of obtaining a piece of bread, and those who have never satisfied their hunger fully. These type of people still exist. They have never satisfied their hunger fully, and they still might not even have an opportunity to get their hands onto a piece of bread, while I, as Amir al-Mu'mineen, be enjoying all sorts of foods and all sorts of clothes and whatnot. These luxuries are easy for me to get my hands into, but still I abstain from it because of this status that I have. Until insan faces the turmoil himself and feels the pain directly, he will not be able to understand the needs of the less fortunate people. And that's why Hamza ibn Muhammad, when he asked our 11th Imam, Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salatu wasalam, about the reason behind fasting, aside from the one which is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. He said, what else? Why else must we fast? Imam said, فرض الله تعالى الصوم ليجد الغني مس الجوع ليحنو على الفقير. Allah made fasting wajib so that capable person can feel the hunger of a deprived and might show soft heart and mercy towards them. So not just feeling what they are going through, but also this feeling, what will that introduce? That will introduce a soft heart to you. That will give you a soft heart to you. That will make you more merciful towards them. And you might show more compassion towards them when you are dealing with them the next time. Instead of shunning them away, you might actually extend a hand out to go ahead and help these individuals. And that's the habit which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to give us so that we can develop into. We see and we read that so many times we repeat the verse Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The word ar-Rahman and ar-Rahim has been explained many times whenever we do the tafsir of Bismillah. Ar-Rahman, the most compassionate and the most merciful, how we translate these two words. We see that it is repeated in every Bismillah. It is repeated in Surah Fatiha as well. It is repeated in the second Bismillah. So 3 times in 1 rak'at. That means 6 times in 2 rak'at. So we're looking at is how many times we're reciting this Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the most compassionate, the most merciful. The more you repeat these words, the most compassionate, the most merciful, you yourself will become most compassionate and the most merciful. You will also become among those people who show the soft heart towards those people who are less fortunate. So this compassion and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will transfer into you if you keep on repeating these words as well. Individual effects and the benefits of fasting, it says, وَأَرْبَحْنَا أَفْضَلَ أَرْبَاهِ الْعَالَمِينَ. Our fourth Imam said this in one of his du'as, that we are the ones who have benefited the most out of this fasting than anyone could ever imagine. For some people, January is the start of the new year, when they buy new things or they make new resolutions. For some, it's the summer is the start, like the farmers, because they want to have these crops which they are to harvest and whatnot. For those people who are Ahl Suluk, those who are traveling towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or treading down the path of Suluk and Sayr Suluk, Ibn Ta'uz says, for Ahl Suluk, travel on the path of prosperity towards Allah, Ramadan is the start of the new year. So they can judge what they did from the last Ramadan until now. So, different people have different times to set their resolutions. January for New Year's for some people. For you and I, if we are followers and they're treading down the path of or suluk or traveling towards prosperity and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ramadan is actually the month or the start of a new year for us to go ahead and analyze and to set resolutions for ourselves. What did we not do since last year? What should we go ahead and accomplish at the end of this month of Ramadan? Salawat Biji Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So measure their level of ma'rifat from previous Ramadan, measure your level of knowledge, how many religious issues you've been able to solve, or how many things that came about you were able to walk out without any hurdles. Level of deterrence in front of sins. Is your level of deterrence increased? Have you been able to deter more firmly against the sins whenever the opportunity of sinning comes about? Or you're still the same way, you're running towards it, the way when Shaitan was asked by this individual, what kind of rope do you have for me when you pull people towards yourself? He said, I don't really need a rope for you. I just point towards you and you come running towards me. So for difficult people, I have ropes for them. I trap them and I bring them towards me because it's very difficult to trap them. But people like you and I, Shaitan just points at us and it is easy for him to bring us towards his path. So month of Ramadan is month for salikeen, those who are traveling. Is a month of accountability, month for muhasabah nafs. And that's why eating too much is bad for health as well. This is also another reason for fasting. Our seventh Imam, Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salatu wasalam said, Al-Himyatu ra'asu dawa'i wal-mi'adatu baytu da'i. He said, being content is the head of all the cures, and his stomach is the cause of all the pains. Now there's no time to go into the details of it. I'll just go through very quickly. I want to finish off in the next couple of minutes so that we can start dua iftitah, and also there will be some announcements as well. One hadith from our 8th Imam, Imam Rada alayhi salatu wasalam, in which he said, which is the continuation from the previous hadith from our seventh Imam. He said, لو أن الناس قصروا في الطعام لاستقامت أبدانهم. If people eat less food, their bodies will remain healthy longer. And that's why you see these some of our scholars who are 90 and 90 plus, and they're still in good health, and they're still going about this health, and they're able to not just having a health, but being able to explain and still teach at that such age is very, very difficult. But when we see them, we understand how they've been able to balance their life, how they've been able to balance their diet, how they've been able to balance the food that they have been consuming. So the more you eat, the more your body requires the more you eat, then what your body requires is an excess which remains in the body and causes microbes and bacteria to develop. So fasting basically gives you this habit. Fasting is basically giving you another opportunity to cut down on your foods. Fasting should not become a reason that in the month of Ramadan, if eating less was the case, you end up eating more, because when the time for iftar comes, you eat the amount that you had not eaten in the last 15, 16 hours. So instead of having 3-course meal, which you're skipping, when 1-course meal, you end up eating 4 times the amount. So that should not become the case for any one of us. So the more you eat, the more residue there will be left in your body, and it will cause microbes and bacteria. That's why Prophet says, Sumu tasahru, fast and remain healthy. And that's why Amir al-Mu'mineen also said, Kam min akalatin mana'at akalat. Often inordinate desires to secure a single gain acts as a hindrance for the quest for many profitable pursuits. Sometimes one extra morsel becomes the cause of an illness which deprives eating for many, many days. So one extra morsel one day might end up being the cause for not eating for so many days. Let us ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to be able to follow these commands of Masumeen alayhi salatu wasalam, and also understand the favors and the benefits of this fasting, so that we can go through this month of Ramadan in the best possible manner. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala an-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima.